Good afternoon and welcome to the Midday News. Here's what we have in the bulletin. Calls for findings of multiple Canadian farm work probes to be implemented. Jamaicans warned to brace for an increase in mosquito population and dengue cases. And later in sports, Jamaica's Netball World Cup squad announced. Thank you for joining us. I'm Shamela Pullen. Here are the details. No more fact-finding missions to highlight Jamaicans' issues on the Canadian Farm Work Program. That's according to the organizer of lobby group Justice for Migrant Workers. Speaking on Power 106 Morning Agenda, Chris Ramsaroop insists that implementation of the farm workers' recommendations is what's now needed. O'Shane Masters reports.
A call this afternoon for the Jamaican government to listen to the cries of the workers on the Canadian Farm Work Program. For years, the workers have been complaining that the conditions on some of the farms are less than desirable. Just last week, some workers on a farm in Ontario walked off the job as their living quarters were flooded with wastewater. Organizer with Justice for Migrant Workers, Chris Ramsaroop, says the issue is even worse as the government has dissuaded individuals from contacting his organization to seek better conditions while in the country.
It's imperative that the Jamaican government and liaison officers don't dissuade workers from exerting their rights and connecting with groups like ours to fight for changes.
And do you see active dissuasion going on?
Absolutely, yes. Many years ago, I understand in Kingston at one of the meetings, they were saying don't have anything to do with any of the groups. So yes, this has been a problem, and they don't have the expertise, particularly for injured workers. The legal clinic system here in Ontario are the people who do, and these are the people who want and will be addressing these issues, not the Jamaican government.
He says following the frequent reports of mistreatment on the program, the government needs now to be firm in its position.
And I'm hoping that the Jamaican government officials are giving the Canadians help and giving the employers help for this. It's not just simply about engaging in an investigation, but these conditions exist because there are no real protections for farm workers with respect to housing in Ontario. So these conditions will continue until workers have a say in their housing and they actually have some real and meaningful protections, which they don't exist.
Mr. Ramsaroop, like others, says the report by the Helene Davis-White-led delegation last year into the farm work program was lacking. He says there was no inclusion of academic research or use of legal cases, which was done over the years.
They focus simply on the terms of reference and the limited nature of the terms of reference of their reports. The issues that we're talking about are far-reaching and quite systemic. And we haven't seen the attention that's needed, particularly with the issues facing injured migrant workers, something called deeming, which is a bit complicated to explain, but migrant farm workers, when they're injured, do not receive the support from Ontario. And that is something that could be taken up and addressed. And this, of course, was not in the report.
Labour Minister Pernell Charles Jr. on Friday ordered an investigation into the new reports of Jamaican farm workers living in subpar conditions in Canada. But for Mr. Ramsaroop,
I think it is time that basically listen to the voices of the farm workers from Jamaica. For decades, they've been saying what changes need to be made. I do not believe there's a need for another fact-finding team. We do not need any more research or studies. It's pretty clear what the issues are, and it's time for action.
O'Shane Masters, TVJ News.
Jamaicans should brace for an increase in the mosquito population. That caution from one public health expert who also believes there will be an increase in dengue cases. Whenever it rains heavily, especially during the hurricane season, there is usually flooding. Flooding oftentimes devastates communities, leaving catastrophic damage. But public health specialist Professor Winston Davidson says during the hurricane season, Jamaicans will also see an increase in the breeding of mosquitoes. Professor Davidson says over the years, mosquitoes have adapted and are now breeding in places that were never anticipated.
We notice that mosquitoes are now breeding in areas of the hillsides that they never used to breed. Because what we have found is that because of the increased temperature as a result of the heat that is generated as a result of climate change, mosquitoes are breeding at higher levels in the hills, and they breed in what you call the axils of the trees.
Professor Davidson says to make matters worse, there is one particular type of mosquito, the Aedes aegypti, a known vector of several viruses that is of concern. He says this mosquito usually causes a number of people to get sick.
This particular mosquito is a dangerous little fella. It causes not only dengue, but it also causes chikungunya. We have had outbreaks of chikungunya in Jamaica already. It also causes Zika. And so therefore, this particular mosquito is pretty dangerous because, as you know, hemorrhagic dengue, one of the big killers that children die from after they've had the dengue fever.
The public health specialist is calling on Jamaicans to do all they can to ensure they find and destroy mosquito breeding sites in and around their homes.
Look in your backyard. Look where you have disposed of your garbage and your refuse. Start cleaning it up. Start making sure that the drains in your home are patent. In other words, that they are not blocked. The government has a role to play, especially local government, to see that the drains in the different areas are not blocked.
And an appeal to those who have pit latrines.
Possible for you or the landlord clear the pit or to deal with proper unblocking of the effluent coming through so that it can flow free.
The Office of Disaster Preparedness and Emergency Management, ODPEM, is calling on women in particular to ensure they're prepared for the 2023 Atlantic hurricane season. Speaking on TVJ Smile Jamaica today, Acting General Director of ODPEM, Michelle Edwards, revealed that studies show that low-income women are more vulnerable during natural disasters. That's why they suggest that women need to be more proactive in their preparations.
Food. So that they can have meals in place if there's a disaster for their family. You find too that, they are concerned about your critical documents like your passport and your birth certificates. All of those kinds of documents they would secure in plastic containers or in plastic bags so that they can be secured in the event that there is a disaster.
Ms. Edwards also cautions pregnant women to be on alert during this time.
Pregnant women can become vulnerable from trauma. And so, of course, they need to have their own emergency kits. And the emergency kits need to have, critical information that is needed, whether it be medical records, whether it be the healthcare provider information, whether it is prenatal vitamins and medicines. All of those things should be in your ready-to-go bag because, for sure, a pregnant woman will give birth within a hurricane.
It's time for a break. Stay with us. More stories when we return. Welcome back to the Midday News. The Jamaica Environment Trust, JET, is taking issue with the National Environment and Planning Agency, NEPA, over the lack of transparency on remedial actions taken by Windalco following the chemical spill in the Rio Cobre in July 2022. It's understood that NEPA has reinstated its notice of intention to suspend Windalco's environmental permits for its Yuatan operation. This because the construction of the new effluent holding pond is incomplete. The deadline for the notice of intention to suspend the permits expired on May 31. JET says there's a need for information on the action to be taken regarding Windalco's permits and licenses.
Because you know that Mr. Knight in August of last year said that they were going to be more aggressive towards companies and businesses and individuals that were found in breach. And they also said that, I think in March earlier of this year, they also said that they commit to acting swiftly and applying appropriate intervention and enforcement action. So I'd like to know what are the next steps, because this is not the first time that we're talking about the company being implicated in issues related to pollution event with the recovery.
She says JED has been struggling to get information from the government on updates regarding Windalco. It's now time for the Business Minute.
Microlender Dollar Financial Services says it is set to realize further regional expansion. Dollar has indicated it's awaiting consent from the Bank of Jamaica to proceed with operations in St. Lucia and Barbados. In addition to Jamaica, the company has operations in Guyana. Further afield, investors have pulled around $790 million from the crypto exchange Binance and its U.S. affiliate in the last 24 hours, a day after a top U.S. regulator sued both exchanges. Binance saw net outflows of $778.6 million of crypto tokens on the Ethereum blockchain, with its U.S. affiliate Binance US registering net outflows of $13 million. The U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission (SEC) on Monday sued Binance, its CEO Changpeng Zhao, and the operator of Binance US over what it called a web of deception to evade U.S. laws. The SEC alleged in 13 charges that Binance artificially inflated its trading volumes, diverted customer funds, failed to restrict U.S. customers from its platform, and misled investors about its market surveillance controls. The lawsuit marks the most significant step against a crypto company by the SEC in its sweeping crackdown on the industry this year. And that's it for the Business Minute. I'm Shane Masters.
Time now for the top regional and international stories.
In regional news, the government of Trinidad and Tobago has given the assurance that the 21-year-old Venezuelan woman who accused Coast Guard personnel of beating and raping her while she was detained at the heliport immigration station will not be deported. Leader of Government Business Camille Robinson Regis says a thorough investigation has already been launched. She says this includes personnel from the TNT Police Services Special Victims Unit, the Counter-Trafficking Unit, and the Defense Force. On the international scene, the number of daily migrant encounters on the U.S. southern border has been low since Title 42 ended. According to the Department of Homeland Security, Border Patrol saw about 3,400 migrants a day since May 12. Before Title 42 was lifted, they saw some 10,000 encounters daily. The pandemic-era policy allowed U.S. officials to quickly turn migrants away at the border. And Iran presented its first domestically made hypersonic ballistic missile on Tuesday. The announcement is likely to heighten Western concerns about Tehran's missile capabilities. Iranian state media published pictures of the missile named Fatah. Hypersonic missiles can fly at least 5 times faster than the speed of sound, making them difficult to intercept. And those were the top regional and international reports. I'm Herman Green.
Thank you, Herman. We head to a quick break. When we come back, we'll have your midday sports report.